Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? I want to talk about my impressions of the solo session that just happened in our All for One Regime Diabolique shared campaign, where JDRD30, Francois, led Anthony, aka Runeslinger, through a solo session, his character Martin. But I can't really talk about All for One Regime Diabolique without drinking some of the official beverage of All for One Regime Diabolique, which would be A&W. In my case, it's diet. You would think it would be wine, but no, you'd be mistaken. It is actually A&W root beer, which is the official drink of that game. Anyhow, I really enjoyed watching that session, and it made me think of several things. And what happened was, after that, was I watched the recap video by Runeslinger, and then I watched a recap video by JDRD30. I'm not sure if he posted that publicly yet. He posted it on our private page, because every once in a while we will post like recap videos or whatever to each other first. Sometimes to think, hey, what do you think? Sometimes, you know, just to get some more feedback or opinion before we release them. And sometimes we don't release them. But, you know, I appreciated what both of them said in that recap. The session itself is about 2 hours long, pretty cool. I enjoyed it. It really gets into, without ruining it for you, gets into Martin's character. You know, Francois is a great game master and really good at teasing out things with a solo session and a one-shot. Like I enjoyed playing with him before. A couple times I've you know, had him run games for us, and really neat to watch how he kind of uses a lot of flashbacks to really kind of tease out like some stuff about Martin. That was really neat. One of the things that couple you know, takeaways or thoughts I had about the session. There were times when it seemed for a second to be a little clunky, as Francois was looking for, like, well, how do I do this mechanic? And he even mentioned in his own video that he felt a little bad about that. That's not a big deal. I mean, I knew what he was looking for in most of those cases, and you know, it's like anytime you learn a bunch of systems, they start to, you have to kind of like, until you become really facile with something, you have to remember, well, how does this one do it? So I didn't see it as being a problem. You know, every once in a while he would just look something up, and that's fine. I don't, you know, it didn't bug it for or ruin it for me. I knew what he was doing, and he got there relatively fast. So that was not as clunky as he thought it might have been. The interesting thing on the other side, and this kind of lines up with what Anthony said, and I kind of guessed, you know, where he was going to go in his own recap. You know, he tends to play with a very immersive intention. It's a very in-character experience, and you know, I figured this out by listening to his videos, by talking to him a lot, you know, and kind of identifying in many ways. And it's kind of funny, you know, watching the session. When we have these really in-character immersive experiences, it does not necessarily always make for great television. And you know, I thoroughly enjoyed the session because I know the character. I've come to love the character and love this the setting, and you know, love the things that Francois was bringing in. You know, because I have a very clear picture of Paris and who these people are, all the non-player characters. When he introduces a new non-player character, even though I'm not there playing the session, I kind of picture what these people are like, and you know, I could see at the same time as Anthony is playing Martin, there's a lot of things he's leaving unsaid. You know, I wasn't always watching it, so I didn't catch a lot of facial expressions. I was listening to it, you know, on my break from work, and still, you could hear every once in a while the hesitations, where he's just kind of processing something, or you know, as Anthony said later, he's kind of having this immersive experience, and I you know, I'm no stranger to having that immersive experience. Certainly when I played my solo session as Philippe, it's probably a very boring looking session. If you're on the outside and you really don't know the characters, you don't have any kind of investment in the characters or that particular game or campaign. But I can assure you that I was having this really immersive experience as Philippe and picturing myself in these situations. And as I hesitated, that was Philippe hesitating. And, you know, Martin definitely got put into these situations over and over and over again in the flashbacks, and then finally when you move back to the present day, where, you know, of course he hesitated because he was being put in some very uncomfortable situations with this non-player character. And some of them were a little comical, and some of them were just, you know, a little bit, you kind of couldn't look away, but you're kind of horrified at the position that this man, knowing Martin's motivations and character, really uncomfortable for that character to be in these situations. And then finally, in the I guess you'd call it the penultimate scene, very, very tough choice that Martin has to make. Couple tough choices he has to make, but something that will just, you can see be the length of time that he ended up having this relationship with this non-player character that we had no idea about, because Francois is doing all these flashbacks in a great way, really kind of putting himself out there and his I don't say plans, but his ideas out there. Because he's allowing Anthony to have kind of free reign with how are you going to react to this, and that could have led things in all kinds of different ways. I really hats off to watching. I was really enjoying the whole mastery between the two of them as they were putting these things together pretty much on the fly, outside of whatever kind of idea that Francois had. But this whole time, he's got this long, drawn-out relationship with this non-player character, which now he ends up having to make this very, very tough decision based on his relationship with this non-player character. From what I envision Martin to be like, his own character, how he views honor and duty, and balancing that or weighing that against his motivations and his wanting to get revenge against his family, and the elements that got added there. And there's just a great ending line that Martin gives to essentially a lackey, a flunky of his main antagonist in this adventure, which is just it's quote worthy. But I kept on thinking to myself, I smiled as I was listening to the game. I definitely smiled much more broadly as I listened to Anthony's recap about it, where it's one of those things where the player is having this incredibly immersive experience through the eyes of their character, but on the outside, if you don't kind of get it, what I mean like that is get that player, get what kind of experience they're after, etc. If you haven't had some experience with them, you kind of wonder, are they enjoying this? What's going on? Is this really that exciting? And I kind of knew he was having a good time. It made me think of some games I've run myself lately. Because sometimes what happens, I believe, is when you're the game master, you're removed, like you're not necessarily having an immersive experience through one character. You're definitely having an immersive experience. But sometimes it's tough to judge or gauge, like, how much fun are my players having? How much of an immersive experience are they having? The last game of Lamentations in Prussia that I ran, I think it was nobody's fault but mine. I even asked them as soon as I turned off. I said, "Josh, guys, sorry, that seemed a little bit slow," and they're like, "No, this is like the best session we've had so far." And you go back and you watch it, and even myself knowing what's going on in the game, if you strung all the things together. Gee, not a heck of a lot happened, but I've started to know those players enough to know that they were having a very immersive experience themselves. This does not always translate really well to the outside. I think I made a video about the game master personality. A lot of us made videos talking about the game master personality a little while ago, and it's one of those schisms as we experience more and more what this hobby is turning into in terms of online play. Just because you need to connect to people that you're not in geographic convergence with, which is a fancy way of saying that Anthony lives in Korea and I live in America. Or, then again, like, the other players in my game, I've got Lee's in England, I've got two other guys in different parts of the country than I am. The technology is hooking us together, but it doesn't always make necessarily for great entertaining game sessions to watch for other people. And, but you've got this other side of the hobby, what it's developing into, where it is entertainment, and you have the Critical Role type shows, etc., where it's very grandiose and it's made to be watched. And it's I don't know, is that a less immersive experience for those people? I really don't know. It's not necessarily my shtick or my cup of tea. I certainly have had a lot of fun yucking it up and really having a very out of character fun time, like we'll call it soda and pizza, or soda and pretzels experience, root beer and pretzels experience with other people. I've enjoyed that, and I certainly, it could definitely be entertaining to a certain extent, but I've had more fun or more meaningful sessions where a lot of it is very immersive, and like you really can't tell, unless you get inside my head, unless you get inside the other players' heads, how immersed, how much fun are they really having? And a lot of times what's happening is we're really immersed in our characters. We've got one foot in the real world and one foot in this imaginary space, and we're having a blast. But it doesn't necessarily translate really well onto the screen. It's not compelling entertainment. I suppose it might be a little bit like watching other people fish or bowl. So that's my impression of the session. I enjoyed it, but it's because I enjoy that session, that setting. I enjoy the character. I enjoy the other players and how they play. Not saying that if you watch it, it'll be bad. You might like it. I mean, actually, it's a very entertaining session on many levels. Yeah, it got me thinking a little bit about my own experiences lately and the difference between that really outward, external experience, which is, I don't want to say show business, but it broadly expresses to everybody around there, like exactly what's going on, what are you thinking, what are you feeling, etc. And that much quieter, to me, much more profound internal experience, which does not necessarily translate really well to everybody else. So that's it. Those are my impressions of that game, and that's it. So go watch it. Tell me what you think.